As Season 3 opens, the Targaryen Civil War presses forward. Following the events of the last season, the advantage has shifted to Rhaenyra. Her forces now command 7 dragons, giving her an aerial superiority the Greens cannot match. On land, the Riverlands army stands ready to march from Harrenhal, while reinforcements from the north are on the way to bolster her forces. We first see Rhaena managing to find Sheepstealer in the Vale. She manages to climb onto his back and fly with him. Back in King's Landing, Aemon discovers Aegon's disappearance and accuses Grand Maester Orwyle of helping him escape, sentencing him to death before being stopped by Jasper Wilde, who informs him that Larys Strong has also fled the Red Keep. Meanwhile, Aegon and Larys are traveling by wagon, but are stopped by soldiers loyal to Rhaenyra, who order them to kneel and swear fealty. Larys complies immediately, but Aegon refuses and is struck in the stomach. When the soldiers prepare to execute them for supporting the Greens, Larys reveals Aegon's true identity, producing his crown as proof. He convinces the soldiers that delivering the king and his counselor alive to Rhaenyra would earn them a rich reward. The soldiers agree and make for Duskendale to take a ship to Dragonstone. At Dragonstone, Rhaenyra tells Jacaerys about Alicent's offer to surrender King's Landing without bloodshed once Aemond leaves for the Riverlands. Jacaerys is firmly against it, convinced it's a trap. Rhaenyra shares his caution, but believes the risk Alicent took in coming to Dragonstone proves her sincerity. She tells her council of the plan, orders the Valerion fleet to prepare ships to deliver fighting men to King's Landing, and sends word for Daemon to return with haste. In King's Landing, Alicent is summoned to the throne room by Aemond, where she finds him seated on the Iron Throne. He tells her Aegon has fled the city with Larys, leaving him no choice but to stay and defend King's Landing, rather than fly to meet Cole in the Riverlands. But he tells her that aid is coming. Lord Ormond Hightower is marching up the Mander with a force of 15,000 men alongside Daeron, Alicent's third son, and his dragon Tessarion. The Triarchy fleet is also poised to ambush the Velaryon blockade. In the Riverlands, Daemon battles and defeats the Westerlands host that had marched from the Golden Tooth, with Jason Lannister fleeing. As Jason retreats, he is attacked by a northern force, the Greybeards, otherwise known as the Winter Wolves, a force of 2,000 veteran men from the north, who defeat the remaining Lannister host, killing Jason himself. They present his head to Daemon, who welcomes them into his forces. Elsewhere in the Riverlands, Gwaine Hightower enters Cole's camp troubled, having witnessed one of their men assault a village girl. He tells Cole something must be done, not just as punishment, but as a message to the men that they are soldiers of honor, not beasts. Cole tells him to hang the man himself if he wishes, but Gwaine pushes back, saying it needs to come from Cole. Cole is dismissive, warning that, surrounded by doom and ruin, all men will eventually become beasts. Gwaine replies that will only happen if they abandon their principles. Also in the Riverlands are the 3 dragon seeds, Ulf, Adam, and Hugh, who are waiting for Aemon to arrive so they can ambush him. They pass the time talking, first with Ulf telling his backstory, before the conversation turns to what they've been promised in return for their service. Ulf is under the impression they'll each receive a castle, but Adam corrects him, pointing out that knights get a horse, not a castle. Ulf is unimpressed, reasoning that his dragon commands more respect than any title. The mood is uneasy, however, as Vhagar is already late, and none of them are particularly eager to face her and Aemond when she does arrive. In the Vale, Rhaena is riding Sheepstealer when the dragon suddenly crashes down and throws her off before flying away without her. In King's Landing, Alicent writes a letter and hands it to Sir Soren, a knight under her command, ordering him to ride with haste and deliver it to Lord Ormond Hightower, presenting it as the king's instructions. On Corlys' ship, He shares a drink of Ibanisi liquor with Alin and tells him of Rhaenyra's instructions to have 5 ships pulled from the blockade to sail down the Blackwater and seize King's Landing's port with the intention of surrounding the city with dragons and forcing a surrender. However, the alarm is raised when Triarchy ships are spotted, already outnumbering the Velaryon fleet. Corlys orders the oars out, signals the fleet to form battle lines, and sends ravens to Dragonstone. On the Triarchy flagship, Tyland Lannister advises Lohar, the commander of the fleet, on how to engage the Velaryon blockade. The Gullet, the stretch of water leading into Blackwater Bay, has 3 entry points. The first passes north of Dragonstone, the second runs between Dragonstone and Driftmark, and the third and largest lies farther south of Driftmark. Tyland recommends taking the second route, pushing their ships into close combat with the Velaryon fleet, where most of it will be concentrated. The logic is that once the 2 fleets are intermingled, Rhaenyra's dragons will be unable to attack without burning their own ships in the process. Lohar, however, has her own addition to the plan. She orders a detachment force to take the northern route, passing above Dragonstone and heading straight for Driftmark, with orders to sack High Tide, Corlys's castle. Tyland questions whether splitting their strength is wise, but Lohar explains it as a distraction. Once Corlys sees his home burning, his attention will be pulled away from the battle itself, giving the Triarchy the upper hand. In the Vale, Sheepstealer returns from hunting and lands near Rhaena, dropping food for her. Having been thrown off and stranded, Rhaena is starving and quickly eats what the dragon has brought. Meanwhile, Ser Soren delivers the letter Alicent wrote to Lord Ormond Hightower's camp. The letter is presented as coming from Aemond himself, instructing Ormond to make camp and await further word, with Aemond promising to join them in 3 days. In reality, this is Alicent's doing, a deliberate deception designed to keep the Green forces separated and buy time. Back in King's Landing, Alicent manipulates Aemond into flying to the Riverlands. She frames it as both strategically sound and personally necessary. She urges him to draw Daemon out, pointing out that Daemon has only 1 dragon and that killing him would be a devastating blow to Rhaenyra. Aemond, clearly moved by his mother's words, agrees to go. The scene ends with Aemond kissing Alicent before departing. The 3 dragon seeds are still waiting in the Riverlands for Vhagar to arrive. Ulf, tired of waiting, announces he's leaving. Before he can, Alice Rivers appears and tells them they are needed at Dragonstone. On Dragonstone, Baela rushes to warn Rhaenyra that a large fleet has attacked from the east. Rhaenyra immediately declares she will ride out to meet the threat herself. Jacaerys desperately tries to stop her, arguing she could be killed, convinced this is another trap like Rook's Rest, designed to lure the queen out into the open. When Rhaenyra ignores him and heads to her chamber to change into her riding attire, Jacaerys orders the Queensguard to lock and bar her door and keep her confined. He and Baela ride out to battle in her place. At the Gullet, the Triarchy ships engage the Velaryon fleet, which is already outnumbered. Rather than hold a static defensive line, Corlys orders his ships to keep moving, drawing the Triarchy vessels after them and forcing them to give chase, preventing the enemy from surrounding them all at once. As the battle rages, Corlys spots the Triarchy flagship, the Bitchfist, commanded by Lohar herself. Lohar, who harbors a deep personal grudge against Corlys, stemming from years of conflict in the Stepstones, abandons her commander's duties and gives chase. With the Velaryon fleet beginning to be surrounded and casualties mounting, Jacaerys and Baela arrive on their dragons and begin burning enemy ships, turning the tide of the battle. With the pressure relieved, Corlys then uses himself as bait, setting a course through a narrow, treacherous passage known as Dragonstone Pass, knowing that Lohar's personal obsession with him will compel her to follow and abandon the rest of her fleet. The gambit works. Lohar pursues him into the pass, leaving the Triarchy fleet leaderless and vulnerable to the dragons above. However, Lohar has prepared for the dragons. She orders a weapon called a grapnel to be assembled, similar in design to a scorpion bolt thrower, but with a crucial difference. Attached to the fired bolt is a rope weighted at the other end. When the bolt strikes a dragon, the weight causes the creature to be dragged down into the water. With the grapnel ready, Lohar fires and scores a hit on Vermax, Jacaeris' dragon. Vermax struggles to stay airborne and begins to descend toward the sea. Bela manages to reach them and detach the rope from Vermax, allowing him to take flight again. Corlys leads Lohar's ship deeper into the narrow rocky pass, using his knowledge of the treacherous waters to navigate safely while the pursuing Triarchy vessels are destroyed around him. Lohar, however, manages to get her own ship through and closes in on Corlys. Meanwhile, Rhaena arrives on Sheepstealer and begins burning enemy ships, but she has little control over the Wild Dragon, who starts burning their own vessels and even attacks Moondancer. On Corlys' ship, they prepare to be boarded. A glimpse of Driftmark burning in the distance momentarily distracts Corlys, allowing Lohar to ram his ship. Her crew boards and fierce fighting breaks out. Alan is thrown overboard but survives by shedding his armor. Corlys faces Lohar directly, but is thrown overboard when the ships collide with rocks, and it falls to Alan to face her. He manages to kill her. Back in the wider battle, Jacaeris and Baela find themselves pursued by Sheepstealer, neither willing to harm Rhaena. Sheepstealer and Vermax both dive low over the water. The fire from the enemy ships drives Sheepstealer away from the battle, but as Vermax pulls away, a second grapnel, fired from another enemy ship, catches him and drags him into the ocean. Baela attempts to dive and help, but is driven back by enemy fire. Vermax is slowly pulled under. Jacaeris manages to detach himself from the saddle, but is struck by arrows fired from the surrounding enemy ships and is killed. Ulf, Hugh, and Adam arrive on the battlefield atop their dragons and help destroy the remaining Triarchy ships, bringing an end to the Battle of the Gullet. The battle has been won by the Blacks, but at a tremendous cost. The Valyrian fleet suffers devastating losses, with much of Driftmark's wealth lost. The death of Crown Prince Jacaeris is also a devastating blow for Rhaenyra, who has now lost another son to this war. However, the Triarchy threat has been decisively blunted, and Rhaenyra still retains the crucial advantage of dragon superiority. Yet there will be many more battles before the Targaryen civil war comes to an end. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.